I believe that having a remembrance, a memory of this and that is very, very key to life. To remember our observations and what we conclude from them, and what we refine, what we clarify. Was it Santayana who said, "Those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it"? Now, I don't know how to ascertain just how good of a memory we have, and in comparison to others, and does it really matter where we stack up in the efficiency of our memory, the memory traces, if you will. I think in the end, looking back at my life, I've had to just sometimes literally put one foot in front of the other 1 inch a day, regardless of how I felt I stacked up against others in the memory department and other areas in general. I remember as a teenager, I got a hold of this one book, the memory book. Harry Lorraine was in there. I think he might have been a basketball player, and one other author. And there were a number of mnemonic tricks, as they called them, to better remember things, and I latched onto that with much enthusiasm. You know, though, if you were to compare yourself to some, you might say, wow, what about the Rain Man in that movie? Was it Dustin Hoffman playing that role? We might get quite discombobulated if we see someone who seems to have that kind of a memory to an extent and just quit, feeling we're kind of retarded, so to speak, for lack of a better word. And yet again, doesn't progress come from putting one foot in front of the other, no matter where we start and what limitations we have, including on our memory? Some might be, I don't know, extremely gifted in that their brains are completely differently wired, just like the very, very rare occurrence of a frog being born genetically rewired, so to speak, to have 6 legs or more, perhaps. And there are those who say maybe that they have a photographic memory. They might even say that in response to seeing someone else with a great memory by way of doing systematic reviewing a lot. Having the time to do this also, and the habits to do it regularly. But I would ask myself and others this, as a prod here, stimulus for thought. Is a photographic memory even the tell-all to life? Santayana, was it, said, those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it. Or in other words, he's emphasizing the massive importance of memory. But more and more these days, we use our cell phone cameras to snapshot this and that. Menus, covers of books, documents. Our iPhones, our phones in general, have great memories, don't they? I mean, they even have chips inside of them. There was, of course, was it Kasparov, the great chess master, playing Deep Blue, the computer. Was it put out by IBM, I believe? And he may have won a match or two and then lost. There was a similar thing with the Jeopardy show, playing Deep Blue, I believe, the computer. Now, that computer had a phenomenal memory, and you might say, well, it's not condemned to repeat the past. But here are a few questions I would say. Does the computer have the ability to sift and sort, to collate, put things in groups, like a filing cabinet? Or is it simply a collection of data smog, you might say, from A to Z, all thrown in one big jumble? There being a book I have, for instance, the title Data Smog. So, maybe it can be said someone has a great memory. They may claim photographic memory, a Rain Man memory, or to some extent above average, but Is that only a bunch of data smog? Is it a deep blue computer? Are things sorted into bins so that when you're looking at a certain topic, you've got a whole body of material to look at on one fell swoop? And just because one has a lot of data, and your phone too, is it used then to look over and refine? I like Brian Tracy's talk, The 7 C's of Success, and his first point in that show, 40 minutes, 60 minutes in length, is clarity. He emphasizes clarity very much. And there are a few others who do too on YouTube, but I suppose anyone who has reached great proportions in their field or growth as an individual would say the same thing. Clarity is key. There's a man heading up a writing program, for instance, at the graduate school at University of Chicago, who did an hour and 20-minute long show on writing. And he points out writing brings clarity, basically. So does Garrison Keillor, who has headed up, or did head up, a Prairie Home Companion for many decades in Minnesota and New York City. Citing in a show, I believe on a Christmas show a year or two ago, that his writing, and the writing of many others, including journaling or whatever, is an exercise in clarifying your thinking. I think lately that maybe when we talk with friends, a spouse, a relative, or whoever else on a regular basis, we're kind of journaling with words out loud and clarifying things, and also receiving validation, plus or minus, clarifying thus. And memory alone thus, about a bunch of what you might call data smog, doesn't cut the mustard then, I think, in terms of both grouping various topics together and then clarifying them, unless one applies oneself to doing this. So a photographic memory, so to speak, a great memory, is of limited use then, in and of itself, I believe. Also, I ran a couple months ago into a show on the YouTube channel, The Futur, F-U-T-U-R, last word, headed up by Chris Do, an artist, graphics artist, and so on, taught for years, now does much lecturing and other work with people. Chris Do, last name D-O, out in California. And he pointed out on a 35 or 40-minute show on YouTube that when we experience something, there can be a multiple of outcomes depending on how you process it, how you filter it. And it seems to me thus the same with this data that we acquire and try to remember. Even if you can do it photographically, as they call it, as per a camera in an iPhone or Android phone, or digital camera not associated with a phone, for instance. You might even say in older days a photocopying machine in a library. So I would expand in 2 seconds my view then of data coming in, so to speak, being processed by a variety of things we call premises or core beliefs, as some cognitive behavioral therapists might call these. And unfortunately, some of them being rather corrupted in information, I think, and thus called a limiting belief, or logjam, as Shim, S-C-H-I-N-N, I believe, would have called it in the 1920s. Or some might have said, especially in the past, a delusion, or Chris Do referring to this as a lie we tell ourselves, or I call it a bad premise on a core level. And hence, we process something through a filter that include bad premises, core premises, I believe. More in vogue now, the term limiting belief. And this would then apply to anything we would claim we know photographically or such, let alone how we've collated, how we've organized it, and whether we review it and refine it. What we apply as these filters are sometimes kicking out certain things we seem to know photographically but then bury on an unconscious level is of noteworthiness here, I believe. So just to recap, I think it's great to have the concept of the importance of memory. Yes, very crucial. But also, in and of itself, the memory on a computer like Deep Blue, or the memory as per a chip in your phone from what it can photograph, for instance, I think is of limited use unless we examine both how we collate the information into groups for easy retrieval and looking at, how we refine it or not, do we spend time refining it, and what are we using as filters to process it, and then review how we've processed it, of course, too. For we've heard the phrase garbage in, garbage out, as per what you read or see on TV, maybe, that you might call derogatorily maybe smut or whatever, or junk this or that, junk TV, junk novels, who knows. But at any rate, I would say maybe we should amend the term garbage in equals garbage out to be what comes in might be processed by garbage filters in the middle, resulting in garbage out also. This gives me solace then with arguably knowing I do not have a photographic memory and have to work hard to remember things. Gives me solace to know that there's much more to life than a photographic memory, as per Harry Lorraine, regardless of tricks or not, or techniques, and as per what's able to be memorized permanently by a phone camera, or Deep Blue, once again. How the information is grouped and processed are key, I believe. For if you doubt that, look at various leaders that we call despots in the past, who were arguably geniuses or super geniuses, and yet threw the world upside down through totalitarianism, world wars, etc. Their brilliance was in part perhaps due to a great memory of Santayana's don't forget the past if you don't want to repeat it, but how was it processed? What filters in between turned it all awry to eventual destruction of mass numbers of people and ultimately themselves too. So my thoughts then, definitely not dogma, but reflections upon my past, schooling-wise, attempts with paper and use of a much spaced repetition computer software to remember things, but with the proviso that the filters you use to process what you are trying to remember, arguably permanently, about some data, some information, is a very important topic, I think. So be it.